to have you with me on the first day of the Perry Mason impeachment. We all know how it's going to end. Every one of us, he will be acquitted. Second acquittal for Donald Trump. I'm not that interested in it. I'm doing the reading. I've cited you the key parts of the former president's brief on Twitter. I'm reading Brian Kalt's article again, going back for some footnotes that I missed. Apparently, some people talked about having an impeachment for Nixon. One of my arguments is the plain reading of the Constitution doesn't say former presidents. And some of the early state constitutions did allow for the impeachment of former presidents or former officials. And therefore, it wasn't included. I'm assuming that the framers were intimately familiar with all of the state constitutions in 1787. If they chose not to include impeachment of former officials, they meant not to include impeachment of former officials when other states had impeachment of former officials. And then this vast lack, I think the Kalt article is the only article. It's a 1991 article in, I think, the Michigan State Law Journal, maybe the Texas Journal of Law and Politics. And then Brian tells me that there are some footnotes on articles calling for the post-resignation impeachment of Richard Nixon, with which I've never, ever been familiar, so I'm looking for them. I've got his article up in front of me, but I can't find them, so I'll get to them later. But it's simply not persuasive. And you have to work yourself into a complete pretzel to get there. You have to be a law professor to get there. Although, look, Ed Markey, you got to remember, Ed Markey, Serious Con Law here, on with MSNBC's Katie Tur yesterday, cut number 5.
We don't have an historic constitutional option not to have this trial. The president incited a riot. The president was tweeting even as the rioters were inside of the Capitol. We don't have a choice. Otherwise, future presidents, future office holders will feel as though they can act with impunity. So we have to do it. But at the same time, we have the other urgent crises which are facing our country, and we have to move forward on them as well, beginning with the COVID relief package. And it is being constructed as we are speaking right now. The ideas are on the table. They are being compiled in a way in which we can move forward legislatively to deal with the economic and healthcare problems, crises, which we're living with right now. We don't have a choice. We have to do it all. It's our constitutional responsibility. It's 1933 right now from an economic perspective. It's 1918 from a healthcare perspective. It's 1868 from the perspective of a president inciting insurrection against our country. We do not have an opportunity to look away from any of these issues. We have to deal with them all, and we have to deal with them all as part of our constitutional responsibility as senators.
Now, did you notice he didn't cite anything in the Constitution? Did you notice that? Just blah, 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 blah. I've got a left wing I've got to worry about. And boy, it's 1933. No, it's not 1933. The unemployment isn't remotely like 1933. The country's bounce back is far advanced, not as far as we want. It's not 1918 with regards to health. The 1918 pandemic was just much more terrible. Thank God it's not 1918. This is bad enough as it is. That's just classic rhetoric, rhetorical excess. And, you know, the amount of hysteria on the left is not a good indication of what the Constitution says. Now, Professor Kalt comes to the conclusion that you can. I go with Judge Ludig. I go with Alan Dershowitz. I go with the plain meeting. As when Justice Breyer was in the studio and we had an argument about how one reads the Constitution, I reminded him of the farmer at the Massachusetts Ratification Convention who stood up and said, we have no lawyers in my town. We do not need them. I have read this for myself, and it makes sense to me. And that's what I do. I read the Constitution and any on-point Supreme Court precedent. I don't listen to Ed Markey. I've never listened to Ed Markey. No one should listen to Ed Markey. But honestly, there just isn't an argument for going forward this other than vengeance. And being bored, I mean, vengeance is mine, says the board. They want, people want this. The Trump derangement syndrome people want this. Some Republicans want this. Pat Toomey, who's not running for re-election, is out there wanting this. Cut number 6.
I think it's very unlikely, right? I mean, you did have 45 Republican senators vote to suggest that they didn't think it was appropriate to conduct a trial. So you can infer how likely it is that those folks will vote to convict. I disagreed with their assessment. I think it is constitutional. I think it's clearly constitutional to conduct a Senate trial with respect to an impeachment. In this case, the impeachment occurred prior to the president's leaving office. But, my job is going to be to listen to both sides of this, evaluate the arguments, and make a decision.
As you know, sir, there's a
Wait
struggle.
a minute. If you think it's clearly constitutional, the largest argument in President Trump's brief, pages 13 to 38, is why it's not constitutional. So you're not much of a juror, Senator Toomey. And I like Senator Toomey. He's been a great senator. Go read it. No one even read the briefs. The brief was filed yesterday. Maybe he had read I can't say that. Maybe he had read the brief. But that's not generally how we do it. John Cornyn on the Senate floor yesterday, cut number 4.
President Trump's words and actions leading up to the attack were reckless and wrong. But as we all know, the constitutional standard for impeachment isn't recklessness. Treason, bribery, or other high crimes and misdemeanors, those are the offenses that the Constitution allows Congress to impeach and remove a president from office for violating or from committing, which brings us to one of the biggest concerns I have. Donald Trump is no longer president of the United States. He's a private citizen. Our Democratic colleagues moved so fast that they could impeach the president while he was in office, but failed to transmit the articles to the Senate until he became a private citizen. Legal experts have debated not only the constitutionality of trying a former president, but also the wisdom of doing so, and I share concerns on both those fronts. I think this ill-timed impeachment trial sets a dangerous precedent for future former presidents. As politicized as impeachment has become, it could become a reoccurring political exercise that would be toxic for our democracy.
If this is the best argument, it's the only argument. Text of the Constitution, practice at the time. At the time of the Constitution's adoption, there were state constitutions that provided explicitly for the impeachment of former officials. I think there were some had time limits, 18 months or something like that. But the framers didn't go with that, and they were careful. And they spent all summer, in the summer of 1787, talking about the executive. And high crimes and misdemeanors got a lot of attention. The impeachment provision got a lot of attention. No one thought of this. Burr was not impeached after his treason and after he shot and killed Alexander Hamilton. He was still vice president, when he killed Hamilton. He wasn't impeached. He wasn't impeached after he left. He was tried for treason, not convicted, acquitted of treason, but he wasn't impeached. We didn't impeach Nixon. We didn't impeach Clinton after he left office, and the allegations arose in addition to those that we knew about, but we also had a Republican Congress. This is just an incentive. It's the first breaking of the glass, and it's truly horrifically bad for the country. But I don't expect Democrats to stop. We know it's going to go. I do expect Republicans to stand tall on behalf of the Constitution. President Trump's conduct was reckless, like Senator Cornyn said, in office. I wrote it on that day in tweets, but this is an unconstitutional proceeding, and pay it no mind. I'll be right back with real news.